kind of the Q&A box, which would be good to get your comments on, and maybe Paul's as well, could you comment on PBS, as I think this is more pervasive in this country and definitely more covert in its attempts to disassociate itself from ABA, on which it is based, and whose outcomes are no less ableist. I speak as an autistic and reformed ex-PBS instructor.
And a question that both of you, I think, will be able to answer very quickly. There's, you know.
I am also a reformed PBS instructor, a recovering behaviourist. I reached a point where I simply couldn't do it anymore. I saw the reality of what it was actually trying to do, and what it was focusing on. And whilst PBS claims to be about the organisation, you speak to PBS, you speak to the Centre for the Advancement of PBS, part of Build, and they'll say actually it's aimed at the organisation. Now the problem being with PBS is there's no particular governing body about who delivers what type of training, the quality of it. There is no research to actually back up the claims that it has any long-term efficacy. For me, it is it's ABA with a lick of paint. And whilst, you know, there are some incredibly brilliant supporters out there, and they will be claimed to be using PBS, so will an ABA and qualified person. I genuinely don't know what PBS is. I know it's behavioural, and I know it's behavioural engineering, but they claim that it's more than that, but I've not seen it in practice. I don't know about you, Nick, if you've seen something different.
Well, Paul, I take on board what you said. I'm not an expert on PBS. I don't know in detail what it involves. What I have been told is that it is ABA based. Now, one point that I was going to make in my presentation and forgot to make is I'm not anti-ABA. I may come across as being anti-ABA. I am not. I'm anti any intervention which seeks to normalise people, and I'm anti any intervention deployed by people. Let me start again. I'm anti any intervention deployed with autistic people that is undertaken by practitioners who do not understand and accept the differences between autistic people and non-autistic people. Now, therefore, I'm against anything that seeks to normalise autistic people. That seems to be the main factor behind ABA, and I would apply the same thinking to any other rebadged intervention, or indeed any other intervention which is based on ABA and ultimately radical behaviourism. But I mean, I'm not an expert on PBS. I'm not an expert on ABA.
I think for me, the only support system that has kind of any validity, as far as I'm concerned, is low arousal. Is the Studio 3 stuff with Andy McDonnell and his team. There will always, sadly, there will always be potentially a place for a behavioural approach at certain times. You know, if you want to stop somebody headbutting a wall, the distress. Yes, we need to find out what's causing the distress, but there will need to be some kind of intervention. It's just that should only be to protect the person, not that, oh, you know, the parents might be embarrassed by the child doing something out loud in public. And as you rightly say, I agree with you totally. Or the autistic normal way of being, and I've chosen the word normal, yeah, very carefully, because it's my normal. It's different people's normal, yeah. Another person's normal isn't mine, and I shouldn't have to have that imposed upon me. I'm lucky insofar as I'm old enough to be able to say, no, mind your business, I'll do what I want. But there are an awful lot of young people who are the only support that they have available, or the only so-called support often is interventions, and for me, PBS is supposed to be modern, and it's supposed to be, but again, it's backed up by the same level of.
In there, Paul, because just a quick thing on PBS. The history of PBS is interesting in itself, but fundamentally, the people behind PBS, it's a mixture of basically ABA and social valorization theory, or the small n normalization of that goes back to the 1970s, and learning disabled people having access to so-called normal activities. So it was it's a flawed, two flawed approaches mixed together. Would be my
and they seem to be changing the goalposts as well as things. You know, 2013, the 10 key components and stuff, and this was, you could use PBS could be used for anybody, particularly, and it was stated in, I think it was Nick Gore's, one of Nick Gore's paper there. So, you know, normally developing children in schools and whatever. Fast forward to just this year and the State of the Nation document that they released, and suddenly, oh, actually PBS was never intended for people, neurodivergent people, i.e. what, high functioning like me, or most of the other people who spoke. Well, actually, that's what you said.
To the criticisms, which is likely to be very unpopular with many behavioural theorists, so that getting into the document was something of a partial success, although it still opens the door to those with learning disabilities having these imposed on them, and to me that is still a major issue. So my son is in supported living as a young adult now, and PBS is ubiquitous practice model in supported living and residential placements. And so
I just think that autistic people deserve better. Damien, I just think that all neurodivergent people deserve better. I think, you know, you asked the question yourself, you know, the ontology of autism, you know, on the ontology of autism. The ontology of autism, as Nick said, there is a deeply problematic ontology of autism and disability, and we need to change that. We need to move forward.
We need to change it. But remember, we're all talking from a neurodiversity perspective, but you know, this is not a definitive perspective on autism. And all ABA people will say, well, no, you're all wrong here, and we're right. So we've got all sorts of people, proponents of different perspectives on autism, all arguing for their own. But the point I'd like to make is that all those people who voted in America for ABA to be included in legislation, and all those healthcare providers who are paying for ABA for autistic people, do they actually all believe in radical behaviorism? I wouldn't mind betting that only a relatively small percentage do. But that's what they're actually supporting, a radical behaviorist approach to intervening in autism. And I think if you lined them up against the wall and said, right, well, do you really believe in radical behaviorism? Most of them wouldn't. And yet they voted for it, and yet they're paying for it. Now, that's a huge challenge to overcome, I think. There's a massive industry over there.
Yeah, I think the last figure I saw in 2017 was £17 billion industry, $17 billion industry. Sorry,
I know. Raise PBS, and this could go on all day.
I will myself, literally and figuratively.
For those of you interested in the State of the Nation report, Lisa has put a link to it there. Sorry, Damien.
So I'm just going to call a halt so we can have a break, because we got more sessions at 1 and we've not had a full comfort break. There will be links in the Q&A and provided hopefully afterwards. Just a comment from Helen around how PBS has been used with their son, I think it is, and around improving the environment, and seems nothing like ABA. And this is one of the issues with PBS, is that it's being used as a catch-all phrase, and there are people who call themselves PBS practitioners who aren't actually doing straight PBS as it was theorized and laid out. So they're doing their practice and just calling it PBS. And it's basically based on a hodgepodge of different ideas. So there the problem is you don't have a structured theoretical model at all. It's, as I say, a hodgepodge in practice often. And it's providing PBS, the more behaviourist stuff, with that level of legitimacy if everyone is signing up to it. So it's very problematic. I think it needs properly to be taken apart and shown for what it is, which leads to Nick's point about the critiques of such practices need to go to high up places if we can get them there. Anyway, on that note, we've got 8 minutes until the next presentation.
Should do you think we could move it back, maybe just, you know, to start at 10 past? Do you think that might be okay, or just so people have enough time to
okay
maybe
with the presenters? Because
yeah, Victoria, I can see, and Ekaterina, would you be okay to?
Yes, please, of course.
Yeah, just so you have, you know, a bit a reasonable comfort break.
Break until 1:10 past then?
Yeah. And then
Can I just
come back.
apologise for overrunning? I'm
Okay.
you know, I used to be a risk manager, but it's not a risk I can manage, I'm afraid. I just keep talking. Apologies for that.
I think both of your talks, yours and Paul's, just generated so many responses as well that, you know, it's difficult, isn't it, to, you know, it's a positive thing that people have responded and engaged. So thank you both so much. Thank you everybody so far, and enjoy your shortened comfort break, and we'll see you at 10 past. So thank you.